think we'll go ahead and get started. Let's see, this says 3:45. We'll go ahead and get started. This is the August 27th meeting of the Des Moines Waterworks Board of Trustees. First on our agenda today is the consent agenda, which includes minutes for the July 23rd Board of Waterworks Trustees meeting, the July 18th Finance and Audit Committee meeting, the August 6th Planning Committee meeting, and the August 13th Finance and Audit Committee meeting. There's financial statements, a list of payments for July 2013, and a summary of the CEO approved expenditures in excess of $20,000. So I would need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
And is there a second? And do you have anything to add about the expenditures in excess of $20,000 or any other items?
I do, if I may make one quick note. On your list of expenditures, you'll note a payment on page 8 in the PeopleSoft report to Kavanaugh McDonald. You'll recall that they're the actuaries that have helped us on Des Moines Waterworks pension consulting. And what's a reminder to staff as much as to the board itself, that is one of several payments that have been made to them. The actual total payments made to them are right at $70,000. So particularly with your consideration later of a pension plan, a series of amendments, I wanted you to have a fuller appreciation of the actual cost we've spent on that, rather than the one that would appear in a monthly report. Other than that, I don't have anything great.
Any comments or questions on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? We next allow a period for public comments that may be related to or not directly related to our agenda. If there's anyone here from the public, this is your time. Seeing none, we'll go on to our action items, starting with item 3A, which is the Total Service Chapter 28 E-Agreement between Berwick Water Association and the Board of Waterworks Trustees. Why don't you go ahead and explain this to us, Mr. Stowe?
I'd be happy to, and Amy and Gary have had a number of conversations with the board at Berwick. You've received some information on this, but this 28E brings in some 220 customers or so from Berwick as full service customers of Des Moines Waterworks. As you know, they have traditionally been a wholesale customer. They will now effectively be a retail customer. The term of the agreement is essentially 3 years and change with renewable options after that. There are some assurances in the material in front of you about rates and how we will move forward. The water rates, I do think it's important for you to note, particularly if you look at those rates, which are inside Des Moines rates, they do not include capital costs. That's handled separately. So FYI on that, between Gary, Amy, and myself, we'll be happy to try and answer any questions, but my thanks to Amy and Gary. Jason and the IT staff also going to be very helpful in bringing in a number of pieces to this puzzle for billing purposes, as you can imagine. But we welcome Berwick as a customer of Des Moines Waterworks and look forward to working closely with our new retail customers in the northeast area of the Des Moines Metro.
All right, so what I'm seeking here is a motion to approve and authorize the chairperson and CEO and general manager to execute the Total Service Chapter 28 E-Agreement with Berwick Water Association.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions, comments, concerns, either from the public or the board?
Nice job.
Yeah, good job.
Great. Seeing no other comments, all in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Hearing none, that passes. The next item is acceptance of the 2012 Water System Improvements Contract 2.
Very little comment here. I think the materials that you've received is pretty explanatory of this, but these were improvements done actually last year with a small change order for a couple check valves that weren't initially contemplated in the design for a 3.8% increase above the initial estimate of about $558,000, total $579,354. Be happy to try and answer any questions you may have before paying MPS Engineers PC.
So again, what I'm looking for here is a motion to accept the 2012 Water Systems Improvements Contract 2 completed by MPS Engineers PC in the amount of $579,354.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Next is the 2013 Bishop Farms Riverbank Protection. This is a public hearing. So the first part will open the public hearing. This is the award of the 2013 Bishop Farms Riverbank Protection to Legacy Corporation of Illinois in the amount of $538,880. And so I'll open the public hearing and see if there is any comments that people would like to make on this item. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. The next phase of this is the finding, and I'll ask the general manager to comment on this to see if there's any lake facility or
Just a point of
please.
clarification. Mr. Chair, I think you may want to reopen to allow me to say that there have been no public comments
We'll take
received by staff.
Fine.
And then close again.
Thank you.
Public hearing.
Thank you. And then if you go on to the next part about
Happy to do
Like-
that. We've found no suitable regional facilities as an alternative to this. To remind the board, you set hearing on this last month. This is essentially a project that is intended to shore up and further isolate the Bishop's Farm ponds from the flow of the Des Moines River. The engineering estimate was substantially more than you're going to see in the bid response here, $748,000. Again, the staff recommendation here is for approval for Legacy Corporation of Illinois at $538,880.
all right. So therefore, this project reflects the appropriate coordination of existing infrastructure. There are no suitable facilities available for rent or sharing in lieu of this project. So now I would seek a motion to approve the project's form of contract and plans and specifications that are laid out here in the document before you.
So moved, as well as estimated cost.
Right, the estimated cost is $538,880. Is there a second?
Second.
Do you want to talk about the...
I'll let you go ahead and pass that.
Take a vote on that.
Take a vote on that? But there's nothing else to add at this point?
After you vote on the contract plans and specifications, I'll chat for just a second.
Does anybody have any comments on that, on the contracts or the specifications? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next piece of this, and this is to talk about the bids, the specific bids for this project.
Just a quick analysis of the bids. I know an issue that's always of interest to several of you, or the number of bidders. You'll see, I think if I counted correctly, 10 on an estimate of $748,000. The low responsive bidder, $538,000. Just above that, $572,000. So we're confident after analyzing the bid and talking with references that Legacy Corporation of Illinois is capable and ready to perform this at roughly $539,000.
All right, and again, I'm looking for a motion to award the 2013 Bishop Farms Riverbank protection to Legacy Corporation of Illinois in the amount of $538,880, and authorize the chairperson and CEO and general manager to execute this contract. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions, comments on this item?
I just had a question about how long do you think this work is going to take?
Gary, I bet you can answer that one with far more information than I can.
They anticipate starting in about 60 days because we have one final permit that we have, and actually doing this in the winter time when the ground is frozen is ideal. They're going to have some heavy equipment out there. So they anticipate that they'll get that completed by early next spring.
So several months then.
Yes. There's a lot of work.
The reason I bring that up is because when I see that we are awarding this to an out-of-state organization, and I see several months of, I'm assuming, putting up temporary workers, it just starts to make me wonder when I see many other local companies. And, we don't really have a policy that we try to award it in-state or local or whatever, but it certainly makes me wonder how much of the bid price is going to be housing if those employees are coming in from another state. Just curious.
And if I may just comment on that, staff recommendation will continue to be based, as it was here, Sue, on our view of the ability of the contractor to perform the work without regard to whether they're Des Moines, Polk County, Iowa, or in this case, Illinois. My experience in these kind of contracts are that certainly the on-site management, including a site superintendent, if you will, are out-of-state folks, but often the folks who are hired are in fact local. That varies from project to project. I'm going to bet that this is a dozen people or so. I assume this is not going to be a significant complement.
It's mostly equipment.
Yeah, these are going to be heavy equipment operators, some trucking to facilitate that, I would think, Sue. But you're absolutely correct in pointing out, obviously, this is an out-of-state contractor. There are other in-state and local in-state contractors here. Our recommendation is made independent of that. Certainly, if the board wants to reconsider some kind of preference, it would not be with our recommendation as staff, incidentally, but certainly one that I appreciate may be of interest to you all. I've had some experience in this in the past, and I think it's somewhat illusory to believe that when an out-of-state contractor comes in any construction project that they're bringing in Illinoisans or Wisconsiners or whatever it may be. Certainly there is a small fraction, in my experience, of folks who are coming in at the ownership level or at the site superintendency level, but a lot of the folks are local.
Good. Well, that's good for our local economy then.
Great. Any other comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? That item passes. Which moves us to the next public hearing. And this is a public hearing for the 2013 distribution building heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system replacement. So I will open the public hearing on this item. Let's see, the project's form, contracts, plans, and specifications. What do you have on this?
This, again, is one in which we do not believe that there is any regional asset here to be shared. This HVAC work essentially was estimated at $485,000, and I'll analyze the bids in a moment for you, but you'll see we are over the engineering estimate here. We believe that this is an important protection element, if you will, for our existing distribution facility, and certainly recommend moving forward with the approval of the plans, specifications, and contract.
And you have not received any
I
public
have not, thank you.
comment?
I'm sorry, I
That's
missed
all right.
that one.
We'll get to this again.
I have not received any public comments, nor has staff received any public comments on this project.
All right. And is there anyone here to talk on this today? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and state that the board finds that the project reflects the appropriate coordination of existing infrastructure and that there are no suitable facilities available for rent or sharing in lieu of this project. This is an upgrade. So I'm going to seek a motion to approve the project's form of contract, plans, and specifications as outlined in this document.
And estimated cost.
And the estimated cost is, remind me.
Estimated cost
Yep.
here is
Thank you.
$524,000.
Right, $524,000.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any comment on that, on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? All right, so now we can talk about the awarding of the bid. If you want to give us an analysis.
We have
of the
three
bid.
responsive bidders here. We are staff recommending Brockway Mechanical and Roofing, really being responsive, Sue, to the point you raised last time, and one that I'm more familiar with being better outlined in what we provide you in the future. We will make a point of, in parents, indicating where the general offices are for the contractors, so you have a better sense of where that is. Gary, do you remember where Brockway
I
Mechanical?
do not. Sorry.
They're not a local that I recognize, so I believe, for purposes of your consideration, you should believe that they are not local. The Waldinger Corporation, as you know, is. So. The staff recommendation is for Brockway Mechanical and Roofing at $523,722.
So I'm looking for a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions on this? The one thing that I'll add, Bill and I have had a conversation about, well, we've all had a conversation, whether it was at finance and audit or in other places. I think it's an ongoing conversation about planning for capital improvements down the road. And I know it's the interest of this board to develop a longer-term capital improvements plan. The goal eventually would be to have a 5-year plan as opposed to a year-to-year plan. That may take us a little while to get there. But the only reason I bring that up at this juncture is this serves as a good example of the need for this. When the board makes an investment to study something, it's really ill-advised for us then to shelve that and come back later, because you're going to see a cost go up like you've seen it go up here. And so that's just something that is a continued drumbeat that I know we all share, and that is to do a better job of planning for the future for capital improvements. So I just bring that up here. Any other comments on that? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes, which moves us to the next item, which is the acceptance of the McMullen and Saylorville Vegetative Mitigation Plan. The recommended action here is to accept the McMullen and Saylorville Vegetative Mitigation Plan contract completed by Advanced Landscape Solutions in the amount of $49,876.09. I would need a motion to do so.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Would you like to
I'll be
address
very,
this at
very
all?
brief in this. Again, this ties back to the FEMA issues that we currently have in federal litigation about de-obligation, but the root project are ones involving protecting our facilities on both Des Moines and Raccoon Rivers. Often when we armor areas along the river, trees have to be removed, both for the precise project itself, but to allow ingress and egress out for heavy equipment. As part of the permitting process that we go through with both the state and federal governments, tree mitigation plans are often a condition, I shouldn't say are not often, they're always a condition that require us essentially to replace in like kind or in some metric the types of trees and vegetation we remove to facilitate the improvement. So that's what's going on here and required by law.
Any comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? That item passes as well. Moving to the next item, the acceptance of the 2012 Operations Center Sanitary Sewer Extension. The recommended action here is to accept the 2012 Operations Center Sanitary Sewer Extension contract completed by the Underground Company Ltd. in the amount of $54,531.75. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments you'd like to share on this, or?
Just very brief ones. This project was necessary essentially to contain processed water that's used at the Fluor plant and to introduce it into the sanitary facility, the sanitary sewer facility. So these are necessary improvements to ensure that we're protecting water quality in the immediately adjacent Des Moines River.
Any questions or comments on this item?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We had approved at the board $53,885, and we have issues like this come before us all the time. And then when the work is finally completed, and in this case it's, all of not even $1,000 over, how does that not fall under the CEO's authority? Do we always have to show completion as a board of these projects and pass it again? I'm just curious.
Great question, Sue, and I'm going to try. I have not thought of the question, so my answer is going to be imprecise. We are letting a contract under the old rules here, this would have been under 2012, that would have been under the rules that were then in play. And so then truing it up after the work has been completed consistent with those rules really are what we are now operating under today in 2013, looking back to a contract in 2012. I don't believe that we would have to come to the board for approval today with these numbers, but since this originated with a different set of rules, we want to close it down under the rules that were then existing at that time.
Also, under Chapter 26 and some other related code sections, the acceptance of a public improvements contract has some legal significance. That puts a date in the sand where certain time periods begin to run, and so we always have a formal board action to accept public improvement contracts.
To make sure that we're clear, the time clock that he's talking about go to bonding, as an example, or warranties associated with the substantial completion of a project. So Rick's point is your action in approving it really begins a pretty important process that you're unable to delegate essentially to staff.
As long as it's not something that the board has created, this hurdle that you have to jump over. I just was curious when I saw such a small difference.
The procedure for public improvement contract, the things like the funding for infrastructure, all of that emerges from the Code of Iowa provisions governing the board's stewardship when you have a contract that's of a character of a public improvement. Now, not everything the board does is a public improvement, but when you're in that ballpark, there's this degree of formality that attaches to it.
And non-delegable formality in some senses. You can't delegate to me.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? That item passes, which moves us into our information items. Planning Committee.
On August 6th, 3:30, we had a planning committee meeting, and the items discussed were, number one was an apprenticeship program, and didn't we discuss that at the board meeting last? Maybe we didn't.
I do not recall discussion.
Would you want to
I'll be happy.
update the board?
We're working with AFSCME on the prospect of establishing an apprenticeship program in our water production area. A lot of detail needs to be determined, but essentially it's a process of 3 years of on-the-job training as well as work and classroom that would be part of a federally indentured, I think is the term, apprenticeship program. So something that I've had a little bit of experience in the past, and I find is a great succession planning, educative learning process. These are highly skilled apprenticeships, as you can imagine, in our water production area in particular, and certainly not anything we're going to be doing without AFSCME's support, encouragement, and leadership. We're in those discussions now. I just wanted you to be aware of it, because it does affect or impact the budget that I'll be bringing forward, that staff will be bringing forward on the operating and maintenance side in particular. Because as you can imagine, instead of hiring journeyman level operators as an example, we're looking at a process that will grow them over 3 years, and hence there's a staffing requirement necessary to support that.
I think it's a great idea. Hopefully, people stay here after that.
Yeah, I think with the turnover that we're looking at, potentially coming in the future, we've got a part of the planning.
And then item 2, we discussed the master plan and the progress. And one great thing was the committee meeting we had 100% attendance of the people that were to be there, and that is something, considering the people who were there, they're hard to get two of them in a room. And Bill, is there somebody here who could kind of tell about September 10th and 11th?
I'd be happy to, David. Ted apologizes. We have a Ukrainian delegation that I think is finishing a tour in the back, and probably Ted is in transit, but the long and short of it is, as part of the promotion of the master planning that we continue to move forward with, on the 10th, there'll be a series of public events that really begin here at about 6 o'clock, and I think you will have seen, or should see, a press release that's going out today with specific times. It's encouraging folks to see a number of potential improvements in the park, particularly on the waterscape side. And then on September 11th, the steering committee that David mentioned, 100% attendance on earlier, will be here to talk through some additional details with the architects. So we're very excited about continuing to work this through. Had a lot of interest from young professional groups in particular, and look forward to moving forward with the steering committee and the board's support as we come up with concepts and obviously financial commitments that attach to those. So we'll keep you closely apprised.
And then could you kind of remind people as we get close to the 10th, and it'd be really great if some of the board or all the board could show up for the public event.
Absolutely, David. We'll be happy to put out something before the 10th to remind you of the activities on the 10th.
I think something went out today, didn't it?
It did. There was a press
Yeah,
announcement
there's
that
one
went out
today.
today. A press release went out today. But we'll re-remind you if that's the right term.
Because 100%, and they were here from 10 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon, nobody left. It was really, that's really probably the
It was
first.
terrific.
Don't
It was
you think,
terrific.
Sue? And then item 3, this is something else that I think it really shows Des Moines Waterworks is doing the right thing. The Merle Hay Water Tower, the neighborhood group, and then some of the same people, the Tenney Tower over on Franklin, have been working with Des Moines Waterworks on making them look better. It's been an issue. I've talked about the barbed wire and stuff, and I think we've kind of come to a material for Merle Hay, and then the more historic one, it's the big concrete sandstone one. The neighborhood group is going to look into historic grants, and I think it's really something, a good partnership with the neighborhoods and the Des Moines Waterworks.
And Ted, Scott Adson, and Gary really have been involved with those discussions. Clearly, we can't always build enclosures that some of the neighborhoods would want, but we certainly are trying to come up with a more accommodating look than the penitentiary look. And
So
PVC covered wire is if you check out the Wachowski standpipe has that now over on East Park. Any place else, Gary? Pleasant
View.
Pleasant View.
Would be great.
It's Park to me. It's Park to me, and I know the city's pretty well, but it's just north of Park in that area. But you can see a little bit different look. We always find it an interesting exercise, David, as you can imagine, to work with individual neighborhoods because they all have a little bit different view of what they would like to see and what is historically significant and affordable for them. So
They're a good group too. I think they were just really pleasantly, not surprised, but real happy with the way the Waterworks worked with them.
Jason Pulliam, who has appeared before the board to give Scott an award for working closely with him, really has led a number of Des Moines neighborhoods in their discussions with us, and is really a great asset in working to try and make the neighborhoods partner up with Des Moines Waterworks on improvements when we have significant facilities in neighborhoods.
That's all we did, pretty much.
That's a lot. Finance and audit.
We had a very good meeting. Thank you, Leslie, for being there. And a couple of things that we covered. We had asked on the proposed pension changes to understand the communication plan, how employees would be, this information would be shared with them, what support would be available, to share their individual information. We heard when we were sitting here as a board, hearing from a number of members of the union that they were particularly confused and feared any possible change, and so we thought this communication might alleviate that. And so Ron explained to us the details that it would be individualized. Each person would have a sheet. And we did encourage, or there's going to be a frequently asked questions. I'm assuming that was put out. I didn't see that in our packet, but maybe that could be shared with all of us so that we also know that information. So overall, good plan in place to communicate. Purchase capacity. The reason we have this on the contract is, I think, there's this maybe misunderstanding out there that there is a penalty when individuals buy more water than what they've contracted for. So that whole process was explained to us, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more as we move forward and how we can communicate that message to those that are buying water, because it's not a penalty. They're still buying the water that they are at the rate that we contracted. But that message has been lost somehow. And then we talked about the budget. I thought the good news here was that there are going to be, with the new proposed budget, 8 additional full-time employees. We've been asking everyone to do more with less, and Bill has finally said, we need to hire additional folks. So thank you to everyone for the overtime and everything that you've done, but it looks like in the new budget we'll have some relief on additional staffing. We talked about the budget being prepared and to us in time so that we could vote on this in October, and then have it presented in October, set a public hearing in November, and then finally the cost of service study. And I want to highlight the line in the minutes. And we know this is because of the record pumpage. We know that. We would love to have another 2012. However, Peggy reminded all of us that in 2012, for the first time since 2003, our revenues exceeded total operating and capital costs. So that was one of those that we've all been waiting for that day. So I thought it was a very good meeting. So thank you to Peggy and also Bill.
Thanks. I can just report that the Botanical Garden, having been over there 2 or 3 times in the last few weeks, it's never looked worse, which is supposed to be where they are. They're in the middle of construction, and I took a freshly washed dark blue car back there, and when I came back it was tan. The dust is just a mess out there with the dryness, but they're making progress, and all is what it's supposed to be. CEO and General Manager comments.
Just 2 brief comments. One of them really goes to the point that's just been made on high consumption. Clearly, this kind of weather is resulting in relatively high consumption. Don't think the numbers are in yet today, but our water production, our water distribution, our customer service staffs are highly engaged in production, distribution, and dealing with customers whose bills will be significantly higher here in the next several months. We're seeing about 80 million gallons a day demanded right now, as an example. We had a brief discussion before the meeting began about our ability to draw water from the Raccoon and Des Moines, given water quality concerns, really because of a lot of the hard work of our quality assurance lab folks and production folks in particular. We continue to balance between the Raccoon and Des Moines River and have great gallery production still. So we're making it through all that process. I know on the distribution side of the business, not unusual for us to see failures right now as system pressure is pushing this water out and strain our infrastructure, but all of which is to say we're very pleased by our ability to meet customer demand right now. But observation that I would make, I think irrigation needs are ramping down a little bit as we see the pumpage numbers. And looking at the long-term forecast, which is a 10-day or less forecast, we'll continue to see hot and dry weather, and our ability to be able to produce and distribute as well as collect and customer service is going to be pretty critical, obviously, to revenue issues from here going forward. Mike, anything you wanted to add? His staff working very hard, as you can imagine, like the distribution folks who have to deal with the main failures. We're very pleased to be relied on as a water source, but there's a certain level of work that's unique in this kind of circumstances. We meet those needs, so we are meeting them. One other issue, we have 2 open positions that you may as board members hear something about. Ron Smith's replacement at a little bit different level. Instead of hiring an HR director, we're hiring an HR manager. We've completed some interviews along those lines, and we'll be moving towards a decision and announcement probably in the next week or so. We are still working on how we will structure and what requirements we have in what I will term the safety specialty. We have a need both at the field level and in compliance with OSHA-related measures there. So a couple positions that are open, and you all may get some questions about those from time to time. We'll be in a position, I would hope, by our next board meeting to be able to tell you who's filling those positions. All positions at our organization are key. Those are two very key ones. Rick, I'm sorry.
Bill, I wonder if I might say something just about the FEMA lawsuit, just to report to the board.
Please.
That we've agreed with the government on the means of submission of that case to the court. It'll be on cross motions for summary judgment. We'll file the opening brief, the government will respond, and then we'll file a reply, and then it'll be submitted to the court for decision. Our brief is due in the middle of September, and we'll be able to meet that deadline. And so at that point, the case will be submitted for decision sometime before the end of the year, I expect.
Great.
Thank you. Anything else? You'll see there's a number of other information items in your packet, and now I will apologize for what is kind of a clunky the rest of our meeting. We are going to go into a closed session in a minute that I'll explain, and then we'll come back out of that closed session and go into, and adjourn this meeting only to convene as trustees of the Des Moines Waterworks pension plan following that. Our attorney tells us, and I'm skeptical when an attorney tells me that the closed session will be short, but but we're going to do our best. That could be, at least 15 minutes or more.
I expect about a half hour.
About a half an hour. See, he's already beginning to head.
No, I'm just kidding. My comments will take about 15. I'm hoping the board will have some questions.
It'll be our comments. So anyway, so we're going to go into closed session, and as you can see there, the CEO and general manager and council has requested the Board of Waterworks Trustees hold a closed session under Section 21.51C, the Code of Iowa, to discuss strategy with council in a matter where litigation is imminent to avoid disclosure likely to prejudice or disadvantage the position of Des Moines Waterworks. In particular, this meeting is to discuss strategy for litigation to address severe raw water quality issues confronting the waterworks. So I would need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
And there's a second. And all those in favor of going into closed session? Say
Aye.
Roll call vote.
Or roll call vote, thank you.
Dave Carlson,
Yes.
Sue Hubbard,
Yes.
Graham Gillette,
Yes.
Leslie Gerhardt,
Yes.
Mark Wallace.
Aye.
So we will go into this closed session. Bear with us, and we'll be back in about a half an hour. Get the
This is what you mean by urbanized? It's very hard to get.
video rolling.
Yeah.
Ready? All right, we will come back into open session, having completed our closed session for today, and we will adjourn this meeting of the Board of Trustees for August 27th. Next on our docket is going to be to adjourn as the trustees of the Des Moines Waterworks pension plan. And just as a point of information, after we adjourn that meeting, we will not be in a public meeting, but their doors remain open for some informational items regarding the 2013 budget. But no action will be taken in that portion of our meeting. So we will now begin the August 27th, 2013 meeting of the Board of Waterworks Trustees, acting as the trustees of the Des Moines Waterworks pension plan. Again, we offer the opportunity for members of the public to address us on the topics or anything related to the pension plan. There will be opportunities to address the specific items as well, but is anyone here that would like to talk or address this body? Seeing none, I'll turn it over to Bill, and we'll talk about the amendments to the Des Moines.
I'll be very brief.
Special.
You have rather voluminous amendments to the Des Moines Waterworks pension plan that are consistent with the actions that were recommended to you and taken at the meeting in June. The actual authorship of the lion's share of these would be from the principal financial group as part of their responsibilities to us, but I know Mr. Mom also had his hand in several of the amendment specifics here, and in preparing an overview for your benefits, a summary, if you will, of the issues here. I would ask Rick to point out or underscore anything that he in particular wants to bring up, but I do want to mention that we continue to wait for final approval from the IPERS group themselves on our entry into IPERS as proposed by these amendments effective January 1. We are working through a number of informational requests and other concerns that they've raised. Rick?
The amendments that you have before you are redlined in the document that was provided in the board packet, and then another page had some further changes, page 7 in the redline version after the first set of changes were sent out. This process gets a little bit confused and complicated because there were accumulated changes necessitated by changes in the tax code that are also made to this plan. There was a whole series of things relating to military service and requirements for veterans and military pay that have been incorporated into changes that are basically required of all plans, and some other changes reflecting administration of pension plans the way the IRS wanted to see it. And so we have, in addition to the freeze provisions, the general maintenance and update changes, so like a software system where you get the release 4. Well, this is release 2 of the pension plan document. And so many of the changes that you had to look through in this red line are unrelated to the freeze. The ones that are related to freeze are set forth in the memo that I sent to you, that I prepared to help guide the board through it. And we have changes on page 1 in the introduction that describes the freeze in a narrative way. At page 4, we just define average compensation, which is frozen and fixed, including cash out for leave, effective December 31, 2013. The definition of continuous service on page 7 reflects that the credit you get, 1.5% per year credit you get is frozen, but you can still earn vesting and Rule of 85 qualification and some death benefit things also. Page 14 reflects the closure to new entrants last fall. Page 18 defines the freeze and the accrued benefit. Page 29 reflects the provision that was put into this plan to ameliorate the effect of the freeze for people who were qualified for early retirement or regular retirement but chose to continue to work. Under the old way of doing things, they would have continued to earn that 1.5% per year increment to their pension. They can no longer do that with the freeze, and that was essential to meet IPERS requirements. But we have that participant's money, and it's invested, and so they get a 5.5% per year increase in the benefit if they defer taking their money, which reflects the growth in the asset that they're not taking out. The COLA provisions are removed on pages 29 to 30. The effect of that will be that the board will no longer have to make any COLA determination or decision at the end of this year. A provision has been added that the freeze is a freeze both ways, that the benefit won't be reduced by a further amendment by a future board. Peggy, did I miss something?
You got it.
Okay, so
I know that was fast.
okay, that's fine. We can ask some questions here. What I'm looking for is a motion to adopt the amended and restated plan as presented to be effective December 31st, 2013, subject to contingency of receipt of satisfactory advice and confirmation from IPERS. The Des Moines Waterworks employees will become IPERS participants as of January 1st, 2014. Is there, Dave moves, is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Sue?
I had a question on the death benefit, only because this is something that we put in place since Dave and I have been on the board. So on page 2930 of the document that we have, will the death benefit that we previously had be in place, or will it be what the options are under IVERS?
The death benefit you previously have will be in place for people who are in the plan now. Correct? I'm looking at my experts.
Okay, then I see $5,000, and I know we changed it to 10 on page 30. I would say 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Is that your recollection?
I think you caught the mistake that we need to correct.
Then we corrected from 5 to 10. Ron, is that consistent with your recollection?
Well, this says 10 here.
Which section are you on?
Well, again, I see 10 down below, but under B, sum death benefit. Is
Yeah,
that?
I think those
Oh.
I think those are two separate items.
The one under,
Oh, yeah.
Down below you
Down.
have 10.
Right. they're
down
not
below it's
consistent.
10, and that's the one that raised from 5 to 10.
Correct.
The one up above it's 5 for the first year of service, and then $1,000 each year after that. And that's then a choice, that's if you die before you retire. So the death benefit that was changed from 5 to 10 was the death benefit that you received after you retired. So if we had someone who retired this month and died 3 months from now, their beneficiary would receive $10,000 regardless of what choice they made on how they were going to receive their pension. The one up above, and we can double check that, but that is one of the options should you die before you receive your pension, before you retire.
I didn't do this comparison, but the only changes made in that section are the ones that are shown in the blue line on,
Yeah.
it's page 32 of the red line.
Yes.
So I believe it to be the case that these amendments don't change anything about the death benefit amounts from what we have now.
Yeah, that's my understanding
But I think
too.
the crux of her question is, were the earlier amendments made and reflected in the base diagram, or the base document here?
Yeah.
Ron is pointing to two different benefits, Sue, and if that's something that we need to run down, we certainly can do that, and you can approve the amendments subject to recheck on that issue.
That's
Because
fine.
the first one is not actually 5,000. If you read the rest of that, it's 5,000 plus 1,000 for each additional year.
Right.
Yeah.
So I didn't remember the 5 and 1,000. I just remembered us changing it from 5 to 10. And again, I don't remember the vesting and all of that, but if we're going to do it, let's get it right.
To make clear, what Ron is pointing out, Sue, is that the 5 plus 1,000 per year of service is for an active employee who dies during
Right.
service, as opposed to the $10,000, which then goes to the beneficiary of a retired employee. So I think they're two different issues. We can certainly
Yes.
check to make sure
We
that
can run that to ground.
amendments are
That's
accurate.
how I understand it, is that,
I-
because when I go over it with the retiree, we point out that once you retire, you have this $10,000
Okay.
benefit, and that's separate from your pension, okay? But if you should die before you retire, then there's a death benefit that's one of the options under the pension. So if someone, and this is probably a bad example, but if someone were vested with 6 years, so
Right.
they've been here 6 years, they haven't retired, and they pass away, then their death benefit would be $5,000 for the first year, and then $1,000 for each year following, which would get a total, I think, of $10,000. That benefit will go to the beneficiary, because at that point in time, that person, that $10,000 lump sum is probably better than the pension that they would have gotten from the plan.
Which I think is the reason we raised it to the 10. was to help with expenses and,
Retired people, yeah.
but, so, thank you for clarifying.
Two
If you'll
different-
just-
one-
if you'll
one's before you
double check,
retire,
because
one's after.
I don't remember if we did anything before, but it sounds like you're comfortable with that.
I will say this, we did have a little discussion about principle, about whether we caught all of the prior amendments, because this is supposed to restate all prior amendments. And what they said is everybody thinks it does, but there's a fail-safe clause in here that if we've missed some amendment that hasn't been incorporated into the restatement, the missed amendment still applies. So there's a safety valve there, which...
But we will confirm the accuracy of the document and report it back to you.
That's great, thanks.
Are there any other questions or comments on this document? Anyone in the room? Yes, sir. Please step right up here.
I think Rick touched bases on it. Did you say that any future board action will not affect this pension any longer, or is this a done deal? Or can future boards change the way this goes down?
This plan change has an amendment to the amendment section that says no future amendment will reduce the frozen benefits.
Will reduce the frozen benefits, okay. All right, thanks.
Anyone else have any? On the board?
That's a good question.
All right, so we have a motion on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion passes. That's all the business that's on the table today, correct? For the
Yes, I'm going to
Board of
pass
Trustees?
out agenda drafts for next month's committee meetings for your consideration. I'll make some available to the folks who are here. And if you have any comments or changes, please yell back at staff. Ms. Kaler will get queued up here for the PowerPoint presentations, the first one involving the departments.
And I will remind everybody, we are going to adjourn this meeting, but we will remain open to hear some information from staff. So with that, we are adjourned.
You will hear from each of the departments in no more than 3 to 5 minutes each presentation, and I'll be keeping track. An overview of their current budget with foreshadowing of any future issues that'll be part of our larger budget discussion. So without further ado, Ms. Kaler and customer service.
Yes, you've all heard of extreme sports, extreme couponing. This is extreme presenting. And out of respect for your time, we have been challenged to keep it under 5 minutes. You all receive monthly this financial report in the board packet. And so what I'd like to do is just provide you the backstory to what appears to be a bunch of sterile numbers. And again, this is the very high level, so we won't go in too deep. But we have 4 primary functional areas in customer service. The contact center is probably the most obvious to you when you visit our office. That's when customers come to us, whether in person or over the phone. Our field customer service team goes out to our customers. So we are visiting our customers' properties and providing customer service through that team. We also have a pretty unique team called Data Quality, and this team is really a bridge between the office personnel and our field staff. And they make sure that the office is talking with the field, because as you might guess, communications are a bit of a challenge when you have different demographics and people reside geographically in different locations. And then the 4th functional area is marketing, and because it's not necessarily intuitive, I put all of the sub-functions under marketing on this slide. General marketing, communications, education, and then legislative regulatory. I'm a ticker and a tire, so I wanted to make sure that you were able to tie these numbers back to your report if you so chose to later on. Our gross operating expenses in customer service are about $3.7 million. We do generate some revenue, and I'll touch a little bit on some larger categories of that revenue. If you back off the revenue or include that, our net operating expenses are about $3.1 million, and that's the number that you see every month for the 2013 budget in that report. And that represents about 10% of the utilities operating expenses. are generated by customer service. So, and this is difficult to read, I apologize. Let's start with the good stuff, or the stuff coming into us. As I mentioned, we have about $631,000, what we call revenue, coming into our department every year. And the vast majority of these, about 80% of that revenue, is the result of termination disconnects that we make out in the field, most likely, most obviously for termination for non-payment. So 80% of our revenue is coming in through that. We also have 20% spread across there. Damaged equipment, if someone demos a house and does not remove the meter or damages the meter reading equipment, we will charge for that lost equipment. And so a lot of these are cost recoveries.
So there's an associated expense with those.
Right, because we've lost the equipment, and so
Right.
we're just we're recovering that from the customer. Our operating expenses fall into two broad categories, or I should say this, 90% of our expenses are labor related, either labor or the benefits themselves. Purchase service materials, relatively low. We do account for uncollectible accounts of about $100,000. We continue to focus on our collection efforts, and that will continue to be a point of emphasis going forward in customer service.
Just so I understand, using that damaged equipment as an example,
Right.
where does that fall in the expenses?
The damaged equipment would actually be capital, so it would not be an operating expense. We no longer have an asset on the side of someone's home, so that goes away and we recover the cost to buy another piece of equipment.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of teams, we have about 37 FTEs. Field service is the largest team, followed by the contact center. Most of our employees are represented by the bargaining unit, 31 out of 37 employees. Almost done. One slide left. Our capital is about just a little less than $1 million in 2013. Meters is something that we'll see every year. Meters are the cash register for the utility. We need to make sure we're investing in healthy meters so that we can continue to have a healthy revenue stream. In 2013, we had a special project in Pleasant Hill to install automated meter reading, and then the other categories are relatively immaterial. Our capital will change year to year, but meters and meter reading equipment will always be a part of our capital.
Including the Pleasant Hill Radio Frequency Project, which will zero out here shortly.
It should by the end of the year. Whew.
4 minutes, 50 seconds. Practice, practice, practice.
And some questions
I don't know,
popped
does
in
anyone
there.
have any questions?
Oh yes, do you have any questions?
Yes,
Sorry, Ben.
we have some statements, and I'm sure Dave will go along with me on this. When I came on this board, I remember Dave saying, the reason I'm on the board is because of poor customer service. And I wanted to be appointed to this board. I have not heard a complaint, but have heard many, many, many compliments in the last 2 to 3 years. And I know that's under your leadership and whatever you're doing that's right. So I have to say that because I know that's the reason, Dave, you came on the board. And whatever the issues were, are not there any longer, and thank you.
It's a great team. The coordinated efforts of many, many employees.
I would guess it's 4 or 5 people have been in your position since I've been on the board, and you are the best.
Well, it's many, many efforts. So.
Quick leave before
Yeah.
there's anything else.
Ted, I believe,
That's enough for
unless
today.
I'm missing the alphabetism, is Ted up next?
No, are we going
Water.
distribution?
Oh, as opposed to gas distribution, or, okay, we have to have the W. I guess we'll talk about engineering, huh, Gary?
I'm guessing. If I'm
I'm
out of order,
guessing.
please let me know.
Your time has
How do you have
started.
this,
so-
how do you have this set up, Pat, just out of curiosity?
How does he find himself?
First line
There it is.
Okay.
The second one, there you go.
Have you started the timer yet?
I
No,
have.
not yet, I haven't got it.
You know what? Life isn't fair, Gary.
In order of making my time, I ask that you all hold questions until the end.
You don't get that luxury.
Well, it was worth a try. Engineering budget is fairly innocuous. We have 2 major categories that our budget falls under. One is the operating, and the other is capital. Under operating, we have basically 2 work plans that fall on that category. First one is department administration, and the second one is engineering studies. The studies is not really intuitive as to what is in there, and basically those fall under two kind of subcategories. First one are non-capital projects, things that we are not going to build anything, but we need to carry on, needless to say. One would be like the lime residuals handling RFP that we did this year. That fell under the engineering studies category. Another one would be the water tank inspections. We have to go out on a periodic basis, drain our tanks, make sure the painting coating system on the inside is in good shape. That doesn't fall under a capital improvement just to inspect them, so that those type of projects are under that non-capital mode. The other category under studies is possible projects that might come up and might be a capital project in the future, but we need to do some preliminary design and feasibility to make sure that that's even something that we do want to write a budget for and submit for budget approval. So both of those categories would fall under engineering studies. Under capital, we have facilities management, which I'll talk about in a little more detail later. WSI is our acronym for water system improvements. That's all of the water main, new water mains and replacement of water mains. And for 2013 and probably the next couple years, we have one called raw water at McMullen water treatment plant. Those are things that we're trying to do to increase the capacity of raw water out there, as well as hopefully introduce some more low nitrate water at that particular treatment plant. If you break our budget, engineering, our operating budget up, you see a total of about $421,000 there. Out of that, the biggest chunk is administration. Those are things like training, department team meetings, performance reviews, and then we have a process that we work with the city on called pre-app meetings. Every Tuesday we go and listen to all of the commercial entities or contractors that are proposing a new project. So they want to know what all the permitting processes are. We participate in those so we can give them a packet that, hey, if you want to build something in the city of Des Moines, here's the information that we need to be able to approve that project. And so it's a good way to start that communication so that they know who they have to talk to, what the requirements are, and can get that off on the right leg. The engineering studies part of that represents, let's see, about 43% of our operating budget. If you look at how those are broken up, needless to say, our operating budget is big on the labor side there. About 70% of our operating budget is for labor. We do have some services there. That would include consultants or contractors. A little bit on the materials and inventory side there.
3 minutes, Greg.
Okay. If you look at our capital budget, 2013 it was $14.3 million. A big chunk of that, need to say, is services, which is the contractors. We do have engineering labor in there for design and inspection purposes. And then if you look at that on the right chart there, a big chunk of the overall capital budget is what we call facilities management. We have a lot of buildings, structures that we need to maintain, so that would be like roof repairs, rehabbing the filter building, those type of projects are in there. WSI Des Moines, as I mentioned earlier, that's about $5 million in 2013. That is again all of our water system improvements. We also have a project out in Pleasant Hill for almost 1.3, and then the raw water McMullen. In 2013, the two projects that are in there is doing the riprap repairs, which you just approved the contract for. And then we have a project that's coming up that will install a permanent line a discharge line from Crystal Lake up to the treatment plant. So we'll get more yield out of the Crystal Lake project out there. Our overall labor, we have 19 FTE, total of 39,000 hours. A big chunk of that goes into the capital work plans, needless to say. It's about 63%, and 37 of the labor goes into operating work plans. For engineering labor, when you look at the operating side, we have about 49% of that is in engineering work plans. And then we do have NP, non-productive time, which includes vacation, sick leave, floating holidays. Then looking at overall at our engineering labor, which is, again, back at the original page, about 25,000 hours. A big chunk of that goes into our work plans. And a little bit of it goes into IT, water distribution, and water production. So we're pretty selfish with our time. We like to keep it all on engineering work plans. Did I make it?
You did, sort of.
Any
5 minutes
questions?
14.2.
Yeah, when he started that thing before you got.
Well, I'll go ahead and end it so the next person doesn't have that penalty. Any questions at all before Peggy takes over as finance?
Well done, thank you.
Peggy, finance.
Yeah, exactly. If I have any extra time, I will. I'll try to do that for you. It's a long ways back here to see up there to get the, I cannot tell which one is the, which one?
I've got my glasses on.
Okay, I cannot see that at all.
Slideshow, there you go.
There it is.
From the
Oh,
beginning,
okay,
on the
got it,
left.
okay. I couldn't read the letters up there at all.
Okay, now you're
Okay.
Very good.
All right. Actually, hopefully this can go really quick because I've somewhat done this for you as a little bit of a preview to kind of give you to test the waters of how you thought of these presentations. Finance, we have 3 functional areas. Accounting and finance is probably the piece that you actually see the results of the most. That would be the financial statements that are in the board packet, the cost of service study, the rate setting process, all those types of things are in accounting and finance. The pieces that you don't see, but every employee at the utility does, is payroll. We obviously process the payroll for the whole utility, and we just distribute a lot of money because we also do accounts payable and pay all those bills that you see in that, a listing of which in the board packet every month. Payment and mail processing is what it sounds like, although the mail processing, the bulk of our mail processing is the mail going out. We certainly have a lot of mail coming in from customer payments, although a lot of customers pay electronically. So mail processing, the bulk of, or the big job of it is sending out the customer bills. Payment processing is what it sounds like, processing all those customer payments. The ones that send checks in, we process those with the aid of machinery, and all the electronic payments get applied to customer accounts via the system, but we have certain processes that oversee that and make sure that they get applied appropriately. Purchasing in central stores is kind of the odd fit, I guess, a little bit to finance, although the purchasing piece makes sense. The purchasing agent for the utility. And then central stores is a fancy name for a warehouse where we have thousands of items ranging from bolts to big valves, and so it encompasses a number of different items. The total budget for finance is $2.7 million. Interestingly enough, the biggest piece of the finance budget is corporate insurance. It outpaces our labor budget by just a little bit. And then we have some services, materials, and inventory. And I'm going to talk then about the non-labor items. Again, you see corporate insurance is the big piece of that. And the next biggest piece is postage. We certainly do all that we can to keep our postage costs down, including using a consolidator who we send our mail out to them. They consolidate it with other people's mailings to get us the absolute lowest rate. And then the other piece, biggest chunk up there would be credit card and e-fees. I would like to point out, you see up there, Greater Des Moines Botanical GDMGD in-kind services, and it says that it's only $147,000, and that is because this is the materials and services piece of it, and some of our in-kind services are provided in the form of labor, so they would be over on the labor side. So in case you're wondering, and you may recall that we have agreed to provide them $200,000 of in-kind, we do, it's just not all in services. We have, according to the 2013 budget, 12.25 FTEs. We have 6.625 in accounting and finance. Payment and mail processing is 1.5. It's slightly more than a half. Purchasing and central stores, 3 people. And the education coordinator, you'll notice it's asterisked. When we did the 2013 budget, this is a position that we retained from the Botanical Center closure or transferring that to the foundation. And when we did the budget, we weren't exactly sure where the position would reside. but since the Botanical Center had been part of finance, we included it in this budget, and we have since transferred that position to customer service. Questions?
Show off. 4 minutes, 10 seconds.
Gary, you owe me because I made up your time.
This is really good
A true finance person did keep an account, right?
Exactly.
Leslie, how do you like
I got your
dollars
I had it.
instead of work plan? That's what Dave and I are
Other than
down
I
here
can't
going.
read those,
So
that
nice.
one.
Yeah, that's good.
Finance is engineering the way that you owe her.
Now that as you're sitting, Peggy, I think one of the issues, as I understand that's historically been up here, is how benefit costs for employees has been budgeted. In the budget that they're seeing today, how are benefit costs accounted for?
And actually, I think I'd have to ask exactly how each person, what numbers they picked up in their budget presentation.
Well, let's use yours as an example.
Um,
You are not budgeting for the entire organization's
That is
benefit
correct.
costs. They're being
In these
apportioned on a
numbers,
per
yes.
capita basis to departments as part of their labor costs. All yours, Mr. Smith.
Okay. Well, we'll start with just the staffing. Currently, we're staffed with HR Director, that's me, Employee Service Associate, that's Diane, and Diane's responsibility is primary administrative. We have a part-time HR representative. She works 20 to 25 hours a week. That's Dawn Goodrich. Retired from the Botanical Center, came over and working part-time for HR, handling primarily work comp, our DOT, drug and alcohol screening, FMLA tracking, attendance tracking, etc. Safety manager, position's currently open. It's moved to operations, and as Bill mentioned earlier, we're looking at how we're going to structure that. We may end up with slightly different structure than the safety manager. HR analyst is currently open. You may remember Tara-Lee Clark. We hated to see her go, but she had a wonderful opportunity. She's now an HR manager with White's Construction. So good job for her. Sad for us. The decision was made to replace that position with an HR manager since I'm retiring early next year. And so we'll give the HR manager a chance to come in, do the staffing, comp and benefits that Tara-Lee did. And then once we get toward the end of the year, we'll go out and hire a generalist and then move that person into the HR manager role, reporting to, starting next year, finance, which would be Peggy. Areas of responsibility, if you just look at the 4 or 5 basic areas, employee and labor relations primarily falls to myself or will be the HR manager. Employment and comp and benefits was with the HR analyst. That will be an HR analyst or HR generalist, depending on what we end up hiring. Safety, obviously safety leader. And the administration falls mainly to the employee services associate and a little bit with the HR representative, the part-time person. Our budget for 2013, $446,000. We have no capital. We're labor or materials and services, so the people that are in the department make up the 70%. Material and services, we've got things like legal fees. We have about $10,000 in for legal fees. We do health screens annually, and that's about $8,000 to do those. Those are $65 per person. In fact, we just had the first day last week, and this Thursday will be the second day, and we're probably going to end up with about 80 or 90 of our employees or retirees taking the health screens. We do fitness reimbursements, so people can buy fitness equipment, they can join gyms, and they can be reimbursed up to $150 per year. Drug and alcohol, physicals, and so forth, about $7,000. Recognition events, service awards, about $16,000. Employee assistance program, that's our EAP, that's about $7,500. And then training is $15,000. We're putting more in for next year. HR challenges for the remainder of 2013. Staffing the key HR and safety positions. Bill mentioned the apprenticeship program. I'm a firm believer in that. I think we'll have it ready to roll out for 2014. Pension revision communications, ongoing union employee relations, and diversity. When the new HR manager gets on board, we want to do more with the diversity, and we just haven't had a chance to get to that this year. And then, of course, insurance renewals are coming up. We'll be looking at those numbers, along with we have a joint committee, union and CPS, that looks at that to determine if we want to make any changes to the plan for 2014. Questions?
Extra credit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jason. And information technologies.
I'm doing it just by touch.
Passed the vision test today. Excellent.
Okay, IT has a $2 million budget in 2013. About 43% of that is labor, and that accounts for the 11 FTEs in my department. External services make up about 33% of the total IT budget. That's where we pay for maintenance contracts and operating expenses for our software and hardware components, for our core infrastructure and our core IT services. Utilities make up about 14% of our budget, and when I say utilities in the context of IT, we're talking 100% telecommunications here. It's all either wireless, wired, internet, those kind of things.
That includes the cellular allowances.
Yes, it does. So it's phones, both provided and reimbursed. About 90% of the inventory expenses you see there in the corner, it's very small, but are related to forms and pre-printed paper for our payment or our statement processing that we do. On the material side, it's really just spare parts, small kind of, only about 4% of the budget related to repair parts that we'll use in various, for PCs, data center, whatever we might be needing to repair. On the capital side, we have capital expenses in the form of equipment, which would be all our software licensing and infrastructure, data center improvements, servers, networking equipment. On the service side, we have 100% of our service expenses related to the EAM integration portion of the overall EAM program.
And it's consulting expenses associated with it.
Yes. There's a little further breakdown of the 11 full-time employees. 43% of which is of our budget is labor, like I said, and it's split between, it's about an even split between capital and operating. The largest portion of the operating is comes in the support of our core services. So we'll have contracts to support our PeopleSoft package. We'll have contracts to support our the EAM package. All of our core software packages have that kind of contract in place.
Just to make a point on the allocation of labor dollars, sometimes to operating and maintenance and sometimes to capital, that gets a little confusing. Gary touched on it also. It is not unusual for us to have someone who is supporting the EAM process or a capital improvement like one of the levee hardening projects we have going on, to charge a portion of their time to that capital project, even though labor normally would be something you and I would think of as an O&M cost. That's what you're seeing up here on the right side of the screen.
Of that capital labor, about 2/3 of it is going towards the EAM project. So that's it.
No questions? What happened to our format?
I assume there wouldn't be any questions. So.
I think you're going to be so perfect in questions.
He knew you wanted to stay under 5
An
minutes.
optimist.
Ted and water production, or water distribution, not distribution, water distribution. That would be a W, not a D. Fresh off from talking with Ukrainian visitors.
Yes, indeed.
So use English for us, please, Ted, not your Ukrainian.
Yeah, my Ukrainian is weak, so you're lucky.
Sign language?
Not even that. It's very good. Water distribution, we have 6 functional areas. The first 2 of which are pretty traditionally considered to be water distribution functions. Distribution system maintenance and repair, which is a large part of our operating budget and all of our capital budget, basically in that first bullet. Leak detection and locating. That's the guys who go out and trace the water mains and find our leaks. Then we also have risk and incident management as one of our responsibilities. That's the security guards, park officers, and claims kind of fall under that, in addition to flood protective measures and some other things. Water quality, which is where backflow is found. Grounds maintenance, which is where our pilot payment is accounted for. And then administration and support, which includes our dispatchers, all of our dispatchers and their supervisor, and our records group, Jeannie and Matt Hoffman, for those of you who know them, in addition to myself and the secretary. Our total budget is $6.3 million. Of that, $5.1 million is operating. So this is a representation of the entire operating budget. 53% of that operating budget is labor. 30% is purchased services, which I'll break down for you here in just a minute. 15% is materials, and then inventory, and it says utilities are 0%, but that's just heat and electricity for the ground shop, basically. So that's the whole operating budget, $5.1 million. Labor is the first part of that, which was more than half of that, and you can see the largest piece is distribution system maintenance and repair, and I've done this in terms of FTEs. We've got 65 and a half full-time equivalents in the entire group. 21 of those are focused on distribution system maintenance and repair primarily. Another 8 people are involved in distribution capital, and it's really hard to separate those because they're doing sometimes in the same day. If they install a new hydrant in the morning and fix an existing hydrant in the afternoon, the morning is capital and the afternoon is operating. So all of the labor in terms of FTEs is here. You can see almost half of it is distribution system maintenance and repair. We've got 11 and a half grounds maintenance folks. That includes all of our seasonal people, which is 3.5 FTEs of seasonal people who do the mowing and weeding on Fluor Drive. Admin and support is 11 and a half people, but 5 and a half of those are in dispatch, and then a couple in records, and then myself and the support people. Leak detection and locating is 10. Risk and incident management is our 3 park officers and then their supervision. And then water quality is 1 person. Purchased services is $1.5 million. This is all operating purchase services. You can see that our pilot payment is 45% of our purchase services. Then the stop box contract, which we hope will actually go down a little bit as we get into the home serve era. The park master plan was a big part of that this year. And then security, that's what we pay the guards. And then you look a couple other places, street excavation permits and city right-of-way fees are another 5%. Those both go to the city. So fully half of our $1.5 million purchase services is fees we pay to the city. And the rest of it is, as you see there, various things. Materials and inventory, a little under $1 million in operating. Most of that is distribution materials. Bolts, nuts, pipes, valves, hydrants, all of the things we use to maintain the distribution system. And then we've got quite a little bit of concrete to replace, asphalt and aggregate, and then a little bit of material that gets used in the park. But the vast majority of that is work we do out in the street on the distribution system. Our total capital budget is $1.1 million. The materials is just almost exactly half of that. That's the pipe, valves, and hydrants primarily, along with a lot of other little bits and pieces. The labor that I already showed you on the other as like 8 FTEs. And then purchased services for capital and capital equipment. And capital equipment is things like new leak detection equipment or new pipe saws or something that's expensive enough to capitalize, but it's equipment. And that is it.
Excellent. Thank you. Last but not least, the guru of water production, Mr. Mike Baker.
Start the clock.
Don't worry, already have.
Water production, a quick overview of 2013. Most of this will be operational. There'll be a couple capital things to mention. Our department, in a nutshell, is right here. 4 primary functional areas. Operations, they pilot and navigate the systems. Maintenance, they're the fixers and preventers. Laboratory, the test it, prove it folks. And then we also have the fleet fabrication building maintenance component of the utility. I like to say they are the utility within the utility. The other operational departments have not a chance of success without the fleet. So very critical area. 59 people strong in the department, generally good-natured. Just looking at the total operating budget for water production, we're over $11.5 million total, and you'll see that a huge component of that, over $8 million, is non-labor. The labor I have shown there at probably 2.5-ish. That does not include any overhead. That's just the unloaded labor. Sliver of revenue lays out there. Now we're going to walk into each area and kind of see how that labor, non-labor expense is distributed. For the people that pilot and navigate things, just shy of $7 million with more than 6 in non-labor, and that is exclusively chemicals, energies, and line residuals. So the labor there is primarily the operating shifts within the control center, the 2 people that are in there 24/7, 365. On the maintenance side, you'll see a little bit different distribution between labor and non-labor. We're coming more closer to 50-50 there. Labor's at just shy of $1 million, and looks like the non-labor is probably 1.25 or something like that. Got some revenue out there associated with some of the remote pumping and storage facilities where we actually do some quarterly billing to the consecutive systems out there that have agreements with us on maintenance of those facilities. The prove it folks, the test it folks, this kind of makes sense. Labor dominated there. They've got some non-labor expenses and some supplies and materials necessary to run the necessary analysis within the laboratory. Got some revenue there that's associated with services to consecutive systems, as well as some just people who have pools and spas and the like. We do some analysis for them. Much like the maintenance, the fleet fabrication building maintenance area has got a more near 50-50 split, but the non-labor expenses are higher. We've got the materials and equipment for maintenance, but also fuel is in there. I don't know the exact breakdown there, but that's the fleet fab and building maintenance component. Those are the operating areas. As we look to 2014, you've heard about the apprenticeship program and maybe some different decisions in regard to how to staff some of the operational departments. The water production budget is going to have a few more full-time employees likely. We'll see how that pans out. On the capital side, I just wanted to quickly show where we do that. Most of this is smaller projects. We leave the large projects to engineering, and I've tried to, what have I tried to do here? Yeah, okay, on the total capital expense, we're around 1.4. A little over $1 million of that is in just water production reinvestment, automation, chemical system upgrades and like. And then Mr. Thornburg in the vehicle area has got usually between $300,000 and $400,000 a year to reinvest in the fleet and some of the equipment we have. So, give me a number. What I do?
Wow. I was giving you the 4 side there, my friend.
That was, he was telling you 4.
Okay, awesome.
Excellent. First of all, my apologies to the staff who I put through the speed chess exercise. It's not easy to do this in 5 minutes or less, and they all, as always, exceeded my expectations. So I thank you for that, and my apologies to the board, too. It's not necessarily the most thorough way to get your hands around what they do, but I think it's a fairly informative process to get you looking at some numbers and some basic concepts. Obviously, we'll be delving into more detail with you as the budget process.